It's a terrible time right now. Inflation is running rampant, energy prices are through the roof, billionaires are gutting companies for the lulz. The stock market has taken a nosedive and companies are laying off thousands of workers. Big tech companies are laying off thousands of workers. Sometimes getting laid off is out of your control. If your company or division goes belly up, there's nothing you can do. The dinosaurs didn't stand a chance against the asteroid that killed them. There is no way for them to try harder to survive. But even if you are safe for this round of layoffs, I wouldn't breathe a sigh of relief. After the first round of layoffs comes the second and third rounds if things don't get better. Tech companies are getting battered right now, but it could be other industries next. I've survived an economic downturn during my professional career before, during the Great Recession. At the time, I didn't realize I was employing an effective strategy until years later. In this video, I'll share with you what that strategy is so you too can do everything you can to not get laid off. Welcome to A Life Engineered, where we take an engineering approach to your career and life. If you're new to the channel, my name is Steve Huynh, Uncle Steve, or Meta.
That's the kind of meta I like.
And I'm an L7 principal engineer. On this channel, I give you all the advice and information I wish I had when I was coming up, all for free. I just opened up a public Discord server, so if you'd like to continue the conversation there, you can find a link in the description. All I want to do is make content and give it away for free. If you'd like to support the channel, take a look at my Patreon page. If you can't afford to, that's fine. I'm happy to have you. Just take your shoes off before you come into the house.
Peace. Take off shoes.
The ancient Greek poet Archilochus wrote, "The fox knows many things, but the hedgehog knows one big thing." I think of a hedgehog curling up into a ball, protecting itself with its quills when it senses danger, and the proverbial fox roaming a large field, sniffing around and trying to find opportunities. During times of plenty, companies are willing to take big bets. They're being foxes. This is appropriate because it's safe to do so. You saw companies building larger capacity, getting into different, sometimes odd lines of business, and plowing money into moonshots like Web3 and the metaverse. Money was cheap to borrow, business was booming, and they needed more and more people to execute on these bets. We saw crazy large compensation packages, companies doubling or even more their workforces, and with the new work from home reality, things like ghost quitting or people even taking on multiple jobs because it was easy to get lost in all of the commotion. But then things went south. When things changed, they changed really fast. The stock market cratered, crypto has tanked, inflation and energy prices are through the roof. The world is at war. There's civil unrest and really large protests going on all across the globe. And now the layoffs. At the time of this filming, tech companies have started laying off tens of thousands of people. What you're seeing are companies being more like the hedgehog. It's not a time to expand, search for new opportunities, and make a bunch of risky bets. Quite the opposite. It's time to hunker down, get back to basics, and cut costs. And the largest cost to a company are its people. Those down cycles all have a similar pattern. And if you're young, you're going to witness it again in your career in about 10 to 15 years. Hopefully, I'll be retired. These down cycles are always the same. It starts with hiring freezes. If you're in a big company, it will just be hiring pauses in isolated parts of the company. Other parts of the company may even be actively hiring during these periods. That'll eventually end. Then there will be the first round of layoffs. Initially, the layoffs will be scattered. It will just be recruiting, or it'll just be spinning down of a moonshot project. Every company is on its own timeline. Some companies haven't started to freeze hiring while others are deepening their layoffs or about to go bust. But nobody is immune if things get worse and worse. When a big company goes belly up, it takes others with it. There will be deeper layoffs and more cost cutting. This will repeat relentlessly and go on for much longer than anybody would like it to. The companies that do survive will be in a good spot when things pick up again. Warren Buffett said, "To be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful." I think this quote makes sense if you were actually fearful when things were good and didn't overextend yourself. But if you're only just greedy, you will get wiped out. There's a high risk and high reward for trying to predict the bottom. Labor is easy to find if you're spending and expanding in the downturn because there's a large pool of talent looking for work. But if you're wrong, you've reduced the amount of time you can wait out a big downturn. There will be some that have the appetite for this risk. The majority of companies, though, will probably stay conservative for longer than they should. What's clear now, though, at least, is that companies are being hedgehogs, and so should you. Okay, so how do companies determine who's let go and who isn't? The way to think about layoffs is as an algorithm. And if you know what the algorithm is, you can increase your chances of not being laid off. The data structure for any organization is a generic tree, or an array tree. You have the leader at the top and their direct reports. These folks have their own sub-organizations and so on until it gets down to individual contributors or leaf nodes who don't have any reports. And array trees are a really cool data structure that we use a lot of times to model a file system, where non-leaf nodes are directories and leaf nodes are files. But I digress. The layoff algorithm is recursive and takes an organization or sub-organization as input. It starts at the top. Your job is to put your direct reports into 3 groups. The first group is completely safe. Everybody in that subtree is saved from layoffs. This typically is saved for core groups that can't afford to be let go, or for strategic multi-year investments that can't be paused easily. The second group is not safe. Everybody from that subtree is laid off. This represents things that aren't part of the company's core competency and can easily be staffed up later when the company is hiring again. Group 3 is where more fine-grained cuts need to occur, and it doesn't make sense to keep or save the entire subtree. In this case, you recurse, or in other words, the algorithm is applied to the smaller organization. This continues until you get down to the individual contributor or leaf node level. Here, employees are either on the keep or laid off lists. Since an n-ary tree is a directed acyclic graph with no cycles would be weird, the algorithm is guaranteed to terminate. If you're in the first group, congratulations, you're safe for now at least. Your job is to keep it this way. If you're in the second group, where the whole division or team was cut, I'm sorry. At least you know, though, that there wasn't anything you could have done to save yourself. If you're in that third group, where some on the team are safe and others aren't, there are things you can do to increase your chances of being safe. Just like with companies, you want to be a hedgehog and not a fox during this time period. It's time to come back to your core competencies, to the things where you provide the most value for the team and company. But Steve, this is not advice. Of course I'm going to try to be a good employee, whether or not layoffs are occurring. Ooh, I want to be on the saved list, not on the fired list. Look at this guy. Well, the way that you differentiate yourself during times of plenty is different from the way you would do it when there's an economic downturn. There's a smart way to do it and a not so smart way. And I asked you to take your shoes off before coming in.
You must take off your shoes.
For example, it's not a good time to make a big push for promotion. My philosophy is that when you're trying to get promoted, you're making an argument that you should have more scope. The best way to demonstrate that you're ready for more scope is by doing more things that somebody at a higher level would. You are being a fox by searching for more opportunity, and that's not a smart thing to do. That doesn't mean that you can't get promoted during a downturn. My point is that you shouldn't be searching for more scope. That will ultimately spread yourself thin when you should be doing the opposite. Likely, when people are being let go, more scope will come to you naturally. When management is sat in a room trying to figure out which list you're on, they're going to create a cut line. The obvious high performers are going to get slotted in first. The obvious low performers, or people that managers don't particularly care for or are generally annoyed at, will go next. Then the real work happens, as everything from here on out is a tough conversation. The people in the middle are going to be reduced to a set of bullet points, and these bullet points are going to be the basis for where people are ultimately slotted in. Walt Whitman wrote, "I am large, I contain multitudes." People are deep, complicated, multifaceted, and sometimes contradictory animals. We are much more than bullet points, but all of that is thrown out during these conversations. It's not because companies are evil, at least not with these conversations. It's not personal, it's just a business necessity done by imperfect people. The conversation isn't going to be driven by a long-form essay on the nuances and subtleties of your performance at work. It's going to be a set of bullet points about memorable interactions and your achievements. I wouldn't spend energy getting mad that this is the process. It's just the world that we live in. I would spend that energy on doing what I could not to get laid off. If you're slotted in the let go list, more than likely it's because your manager doesn't want to fight for you. So you need to get on your manager's good side, even if you don't like them, if you care about your job at least. If you're slotted in the keep list, your job is to stay there. Don't get complacent, others will be doing what they can to take your place. If you're in the middle list, know that you're going to get reduced to bullet points, and these bullet points are going to be the difference between having a job or getting laid off. Do this exercise. If you were your manager or skip level, what would your 1 to 3 bullet points be if that layoff conversation were to occur today? You don't get paragraphs to describe you and your accomplishments, you only get the greatest hits. The critical piece is that this list needs to be from the perspective of the people that are going to help make the decisions. If your bullet points are weak or non-existent because there's no visibility into your work, your highest priority task is to hedgehog. You need to focus on the quality of your outputs and making sure that you get along with your manager. You need to shore up the negative points. Now is not the time to distract yourself by searching for potential places where you can add value and have more scope. The reason is because you risk having the bullet point being something like, "Steve seems distracted. His code quality has gone down recently," or "Steve has been spending time on his proposal to rewrite our core systems, but hasn't checked code in for months." Like I said earlier, likely more scope is going to come your way, but those projects and responsibilities are likely to go to the high performers that are nailing their existing scope, rather than people trying to uplevel themselves to the detriment of existing commitments. When layoffs are happening, you have to finish your plate first before you ask for seconds. When the Great Recession occurred, I realized in hindsight that I was hedgehogging. While extensive layoffs didn't occur at Amazon, I did focus on 2 things that increased my chances of not getting laid off: writing high quality, fully tested, and clean code, and being a champion for operations. Now, I've been on call and carried a pager for longer than most Amazonians have been at the company, so that's a self-assessed strength of mine. At the time, I made sure to double down on driving down the ticket counts for my team, hopped onto calls for high severity issues even when I wasn't on call, and drove root causes for persistent issues. My favorite thing to do as an engineer is to check in code that stops tickets from getting cut in the first place. In these trying times, you need to make sure you concentrate on quality for the places that you provide the most value to the company. If you're a medium-level SDE, you need to take stickies, write the code quickly, and ensure that it's high quality. If you have a different role or level, you need to make sure you are nailing your core competencies. When the company hedgehogs, you too need to hedgehog. Now is not the time to be distracted or to take risky bets by taking on more scope. Role models are kept. People that are distracted, do low quality work, are flaky, are on the wrong side of their managers, or are hard to work with, are let go. If you've been laid off, I'm sorry that happened to you. If your whole team was laid off, there is nothing that could have been done. But if some of your peers were kept, I think it's incumbent on you to reflect on why. You should try to extract as many lessons as you can from the good and bad things that happen in your life. It's gonna be hard, it's gonna suck, but it's gonna be okay. If you don't care if you're gonna get laid off, cool, take a sabbatical or maybe it's time to retire. But for everybody else, I really encourage you to determine what your bullet points are and make sure that they are solid. And definitely don't get cocky and think that you're immune to being let go. You're not. If you're new to my content, why not binge? It's good stuff. Here's a video on high leverage skills to supercharge your career. If you want to know how much money I make, I give you all the juicy details in this video. Don't take a nicer pair of shoes on the way out. I hope you're living your best life, and we'll see you next time.